Chairperson. Chairperson, is it my watch or what's happened? It's past
No,
2.
it's a watch. It's a watch on the side.
So, now we will proceed with our meeting. He then requested that I proceed with the meeting. So I will try to proceed with the meeting. However, where I encounter challenges, I will request Ntate Mpumza to assist. As you all know that we are still busy with the process of local government, and there are other commitments that I will need to just deal with immediately. So I will be requested to be excused for about 30 minutes in the meeting. But in the meanwhile, we'll have someone who will chair the meeting. Colleagues, we met in the morning where we discussed the AG's report. And in that report, there were some issues where the members of the committee have expressed their dissatisfactions because some of the issues that have been raised there, they have been coming in each and for the past 3 consecutive years. And when we allowed members for the discussion, there were some questions which were asked by members but could not be responded to. And we agreed that some of the questions will still be forwarded to this second session of the meeting. So now we are meeting to discuss the 2021 annual report of the Department of Cooperative Governance, the Municipal Infrastructure Support Grant, and the Department of Traditional Affairs. The annual report of the Department of Cooperative Governance for 2020-2021 reporting period sees the department stagnant in a qualified audit opinion, and its financial and service delivery performance has not yet improved significantly from the previous financial year. The department could still not provide a credible and reliable financial statement. In other instances, there were also material misstatements in the financial statement, which could not be corrected because the financial statements were published. Furthermore, the department management was unable to implement proper record-keeping controls in a proper manner. All of this resulted in a qualified audit opinion. Out of the 6 auditees within the corporate governance and traditional affairs portfolio, the department is the only one that has not achieved a clean audit. As in the previous financial year, the expenditure on the allocated budget is not achieved as per the targets which were made. And we also have a challenge of the CWP, which has always been a challenge in terms of the audit outcome. When you look at the audit outcome of the 3 consecutive years, the issue of CWP was also indicated there. The irregular expenditures related to the payment made to expired CWP contract, as well as the irregular appointment of some of the CWP implementing agencies. It is of great concern that none of this has been resolved, and that there is audit finding relating to lack of evidence to support that disciplinary steps were taken against staff who have caused irregular, fruitless, and wasteful expenditures. It is also disturbing that during that year under the review, department had negative findings in the in relation to the management of CWP assets, despite appointing the service providers to the value of 8.1 million to verify and confirm assets consumable administered by CWP non-profit organization at a national, provincial, and local site and sub-sites. The appointment seems to have offered little value for money in the department. And we also look at the Department of Traditional Affairs. We also looked at MISA. They have achieved a qualified audit opinion without findings. So that on its own, it shows that there has been improvement in terms of their performance, slightly from 79% in 2021 to 81% in 2021. It's MISA. A still shortfall of the 9% achieved in 2018-2019. The main target does seem to constrain the entity from regaining the performance standard set in 2018-2019 relates to supporting municipalities to implement infrastructure projects and programs through labor-intensive methods, as well as supporting some district municipalities to improve their municipal infrastructure grant expenditure to at least 90%. COVID-19 restrictions also negatively affected the achievement of targets relating to the number of youth enrolled in MISA experiential learning and young graduate program. While MISA has attained a clean audit for the third consecutive year, it is a concerning that it inaccurate, fruitless, and wasteful expenditures to the value of 525,862. The entity also spent only 63% of its budget, resulting in under expenditure to the value of 130 million. There is an outstanding matter relating to the arrest and subsequently release on bail of the MISA CEO in connection with Cienza Coop contract for the supply and installation of ventilated improved project in Northern Cape and in Amatola District Municipality in the Eastern Cape. During the meeting of the 20 May 2021, the committee resolved that the minister brief it on the agreement reached with MISA CEO and the reasons as to why he has not been yet suspended pending the finalization of the ongoing investigation and the court case on the Cienza Coop contract matter. This has not been done and needs to be followed up. In the same meeting, the committee also resolved that by the 24th May 2021, the CEO of MISA must furnish the committee with a report outlining the status of the court case relating to the submission of a fraudulent tax certificate by Cienza. This is also not yet been compiled with. Over the next 5 years, MISA seeks to align its strategic focus area with some key elements of the district development model, including integrated service provision, infrastructure engineering, spatial reconstructing, and the economic positioning for each district and metropolitan space. The entity continues to struggle with achieving the target relating to this key element of the DDM, poses a threat to the realization of its 5-year strategic vision. And then on the Department of Traditional Affairs, in their forwards to the annual report, the Department of Traditional Affairs, both the minister and deputy minister highlighted the loss of the 13th initiates in the province of Eastern Cape over the December 2020 initiation season. This is despite the submission of risk plan by the provincial government and the provincial houses of the traditional leadership and the Kwesa leaders. The portfolio committee has had a a detailed engagement on this matter, including meeting with the Provincial House as well as the representations from the South African Police Service and National Prosecuting Authority in the Eastern Cape on the 5th of August 2021. Both the Minister and Deputy Minister placed their hopes on the coming into operation of the Customary Initiation Act, which establishes the structures envisaged to address some of the key challenges associated with the cultural practice of male initiation, especially in Eastern Cape. The Act came into effect on the 1st of September 2021. On the 3rd of March 2021, the committee has a preliminary discussion with the department regarding its readiness for implementation of the Act once it has come into a follow-up meeting. In this regard, as resolved in the meeting of the 5th August 2021, is now opportune. The department is also faced constraints in terms of its approved organizational structure, which has 127 positions, but only 89 are funded. This constrained the department from delivering effective on all aspects of its mandate. In summary, the department has registered well above average performance aspect of its mandate, well above performance, my apologies, during the period under the review. The main challenge seems to have been the misaligned between the department organizational structure and its broader mandate and strategy. The organizational structure therefore needs to be reviewed and be better aligned to the strategic plan and the mandate of the department. Now, comrades, honorable members, we've been in the elections, so this thing of comrades is in our tongues. Now, honorable members will go to the agenda of this afternoon meeting. Shevin, can you please flag the agenda? Shevin? Colleagues, here is the agenda for this afternoon meeting. We'll have two presentation and discussion. Then we'll have the last presentation and discussion. Can we get a mover for the agenda and the seconder?
I move, Chair.
Thank you, honorable member.
I so second.
Thank you, honorable Mpumza and honorable Kaiser. As we're gonna start with these items in the agenda, I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Minister, Dr. Honorable Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, who is part of our meeting. The CEO of MISA is also part of our meeting. The Deputy Minister of Cooperative Governance, Honorable Tembinga Dime, is also part of our meeting. I saw that we also have the DG of Cooperative Governance is also in the meeting. We also have the DG of Traditional Affairs, who's also part of the meeting. And we also have our honorable members who are part of the meeting, and most of them were also part of the meeting in the morning. So I will now start with the first item in the agenda, which is a presentation by Decog. DG, Minister.
Good afternoon, Chairperson. I'm sorry, the sound is really not good, but I just want to check in on Minister because she would go first.
It's okay, DG, they've called upon you. You can go ahead.
Okay, good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson, and afternoon to the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. And I also want to greet our Minister, and I also want to greet the Deputy Ministers and all the officials that are present. We are here to actually then conduct our presentation on the outcomes of the 2020-21.
My apologies, DG. Sorry to interrupt you. I think the minister should go first and we'll come after the minister. My apologies.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson.
Let me allow the minister and deputy minister, and then the DG will come after. My apologies, minister. You are the one who's supposed to go first.
No problem. I thought maybe you were sympathizing with me because I buried my brother over the weekend. So I thought
We didn't know
that's
that.
why you were not calling. But thank you. I will say something at the beginning of each session, but I'm not sure whether I'll be able to stay till the end or when we'll end. I have some family issues to attend to, if you don't mind.
It's okay, minister. We can allow the DG to go first. My condolences for your loss.
No, it's okay. I'll say something now at the beginning, but I was just saying I may not be able to stay till the end, depending on when you finish, because I still have some family issues to attend to.
Okay, it's noted, minister.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable Chairperson, Mr. Kasa, and Honorable Chair of the session, the whip of the portfolio, and all deputy ministers and all members of the portfolio committee and officials of the department who are here. Let me just welcome our new portfolio committee chair. I think it's the first time we discuss annual reports with him. So I welcome him and commit that we will give him the full support that we were giving to the other portfolio chairperson. We meet just after we participated in the 6th free and fair local government elections in a democratic dispensation. We are faced with the mammoth task of ensuring that there is a seamless transition as we welcome the new councils. We would be embarking on a vigorous program with SALGA to capacitate the new councillors and ensure that our communities do not feel any lack of service delivery in the coming period. We'd like upfront to say that we are presenting these reports late since the audit process of Decog took longer than anticipated, as acknowledged by the AG. There's been some slight improvement of the DCOG performance as compared to the last financial year, taking into consideration that we had 31 targets of the annual performance plan of the period under review, as compared to 21 on 2019-2020 financial year, meaning 10 additional targets were added. Some of the targets were added mid-year, like the one on the sanitization and urgent repairs and refurbishment of water and sanitation infrastructure, in contributing to reducing the fight against COVID. As the pandemic exposed as that a lot of our communities then did not have access to water. DCOG, as the chair has said, received a qualified audit opinion as we anticipated and set this target in the APP 2021. I'm convinced that things are beginning to change, though slowly. I'm pleased that DTA and MISA maintained their unqualified audit opinion, and they received clean audits, both of them. During this difficult period, we had to deal with COVID. I won't dwell at length with that because we all are aware of it. Of course, the department also had to deal with more than 60 court cases that related to COVID, just as a department, not counting those that were part of the government as a whole. So that also occupied a lot of our time. The department over the year identified many governance-related challenges in local government, and through various engagements with a range of stakeholders, it was decided to address some of these challenges through the amendments in the Municipal Structures Act, which came into effect, eventually came into effect this year in November. Our various engagement with the committee on the Local Government Municipal Systems Amendment Bill in the past year was very valuable. As we are aware, the bill was signed by the President on the 6th May 2021. Some of the amendments of this bill include the following: the abolition of the plenary type municipality. And of course, it's for obvious reasons that the plenary type municipalities were not quite desirable. But in the interest of time, I won't go into those reasons. And we also had the prohibition on councillor for 2 years from being elected into office if such councillors breached the code of conduct, and also allowing the MEC to designate a person to call and chair a meeting when the municipal manager refuses to do so. And of course, establishment of the office of the chief whip. And these are very important amendments. And I must also say that we are not pleased with ourselves in terms of DCOG for receiving this qualified audit. But one of the major issues there is the CWP, as you said, but CWP was, the NPOs were appointed in 2018. And of course, the courts found that they were appointed, they were appointed in an inappropriate manner. And therefore, the expenditure from those NPOs is now not deemed as legal expenditure because they were not appointed legally. So that's part of the reason why it's not the only reason, but that's a part of the reason why we have not improved. But also, you are correct, Chair, that the asset register of the CWP, it's difficult because those assets are paid for by the department, but they are bought by NPOs and kept by NPOs. They are not kept by us. So it's a difficult matter that I think cannot be resolved easily because we don't have control over those assets. We pay for them, but we don't have control over them. It's the NPOs that have control over them. So we are trying to find ways, but I don't think it's going to be there's an easy solution to it. But I just wanted to highlight maybe those two issues. And of course, we are correct that most of the qualifications come from the CWP. And that's partly why we are trying to redesign CWP, because the way it is, we spend money and have no control over what the NPOs actually do. So we're trying to redesign it so that we can have a better handle on what goes on there, including the actual outcomes, because they were supposed to also, as part of their work, to train CWP so that participants, so that they can have skills which they can then take and use and exit the program. But we find that they are not exiting because they're not getting proper training. So I just thought I should highlight the CWP issues because they are giving us quite a lot of problems. And of course, I think the department probably have been slow in consequence management, but I can assure you that if you were to look at what's going on now, there will be, but we're looking at that period. So we will be improving on the issue of consequence management and moving faster on consequence management. So maybe I'll just hand over to the DG. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, Honorable Minister. DG.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to Minister and Chair. With your permission, I'd like to turn off my camera just to help me with the network. And whilst I do that, if I could also then ask that the department's presentation please be flighted, Chairperson. I'm sorry, Chairperson, I'm not so sure if the Secretariat is flighting. Thank you. If I could ask that it be put into presentation mode. So, Honorable Chairperson and Honorable Members of the Portfolio Committee, I also greet the Minister and the Deputy Ministers and all the Directors General from DTA and the CEO of MISA and all the senior management of the department. I'm here to present the annual report for the 2020-21 financial year and to also seek then approval for the submission to Parliament. If I could move to the next slide, please. And we are here then to provide an overview of the audit outcomes and to also then look at both the annual performance report and the annual financial performance. If we could move to the next slide, please. And to the next one, please. Slide 4. So the vision and mission and values of the department actually remain as they are in our strategic plan from 2019 to 2025. So we're here to just ensure that we improve the lives of people through cooperative governance, and that we also have an impact statement that says that we need to be functional and capable in terms of our cooperative governance system. If we could move to the next slide, it then talks to the Decog outcomes and the fact that we have 6 of these that are linked to the 7 government priorities. I won't read all of them, but they are there, and we can then move to the next slide, please. So the overview of our performance for 2021, you will see that our performance has improved from 62% in the prior year to 68% in the year under review. In 2021, we've had 31 targets that we needed to meet, and of the 31, we achieved 21 of these, translating then into the 68%. And the table next to that is a comparative from the prior year. If we could move to the next slide, please. So the list of targets that you see are the ones that we have achieved per program. And in administration, we achieved 4 of these. The one was the qualified audit opinion. And also we had some business processes that were automated in the ICT space, and 100% was spent on the PPE and ICT and internal communication awareness products. And we also had submitted our performance agreements on time. In the local government support and intervention management branch, the hubs were established in the 2 pilot districts and the 1 pilot metro. And the IDPs and 1 plans were aligned to the framework that we had developed and circulated to the municipalities and provinces. And our IUDF implementation plan was also aligned to the DDM, and the capital expenditure framework was also developed for the 4 intermediate cities. And then reports on Section 100 were developed, and the Section 139 improvement plans were also implemented and developed. If we can move to the next slide. This is also then a continuation of the targets per program, and then under institutional development, we had a report which provided the local government elections. So in other words, the report actually was there to support the preparations of the local government elections. The Smart Cities framework was also finalized and approved. And we also have a consolidated report on the implementation of actions to address issues raised by the AG. We also then had the 3 quarterly Municipal Public Accounts Committees functionality assessment report developed. In the National Disaster Management Center, we had 10 municipalities in priority disaster areas supported. And we also had a model for disaster funding arrangements finalized and presented to all the stakeholders. And the DEFF was also assessed and supported to implement the disaster management function. And the annual report on the performance and expenditure of disaster grants was developed. And support was also provided to 10 districts regarding the development of the COVID-19 responsive risk reduction strategies. In the Community Works program, we had 265,971 people who participated in the program. And we had 6 CWP partnerships established. If we could then go to the next slide. This actually then indicates the targets that were not achieved. And the first one was that we were due to have ensured that 100% of our invoices were paid within 30 days. What we did achieve was 97%. So we received for the period 789 invoices and 764 were processed on time. So the root cause of us not receiving the 3% was that there were some delays in the validation of invoices. And we have subsequently also then taken action and ensured that the affected officials were actually then taken through a process of training, but also understanding that there should be no delays. And of course, into the following year, we're also then ensuring that we will be taking disciplinary action. With regards to the next one on the organizational performance, this one was not achieved because these targets, in essence, were then, there were some dependencies on external stakeholders, and the target for 2021-22 has also been redefined. If you go to the next target that was not achieved, we were supposed to ensure that we had 80% alignment of the organizational structure to the 2020-25 strategic plan. We did not achieve this. There was a need for us to actually then conceptualize and develop a new operating model so that we could have then maximized the department's efforts to actually drive the DDM. So we've had to have many consultations within the department and with some critical stakeholders. So it took us a bit longer than we would have anticipated. We anticipated. If you move to the next slide. We were due to also then ensure that we had 44 draft district and 8 Metro 1 plans developed. What we did achieve here was that we had final draft 1 plans for the 3 pilot sites developed. The reason for the deviation was that we needed to have still conducted some diagnostic reports, and that we needed to also ensure, that the hubs were actually then implemented fully, and that they would have then assisted us in ensuring that the 1 plans that were drafted were then also taken through to the remaining districts. So this is a target that we then carried over into this financial year. On the next target that was not achieved, we were supposed to have spent 20% spent by municipalities on sanitization. So the project here was introduced mid-year due to COVID. And of course, it therefore had an impact on us not fully achieving the target. The next target was that 75% of MIG receiving municipalities had to spend 90% of their MIG allocations. So only 50% of the MIG receiving municipalities had spent 60% of the MIG allocation. And of course, this had come about due to poor planning and delayed procurement processes, resulting in a late start of the projects, and the implementation of the COVID-19 lockdown also impacted on the timeliest preparations of the MIG projects, and also availability of delivery of building materials from suppliers also had an impact on the target. If I could then move to the last slide on the targets that were not achieved. We were due to have also drafted an integrated local government capacity building strategy. We started the process, but unfortunately we were not able to appoint a service provider on time. And this also then had a negative impact. We've carried this target over to this financial year as well. The last one was the drafting of the funding model for local government. So we managed to draft the funding model and the framework with recommended timelines, but the concept paper on the infrastructure asset management part of it is something that we only then finalized later on, now in July. So the target then was not achieved. Next slide, please. We were due to have trained 25,000 CWP participants. However, the target was not achieved. We found that we had some constraints due to the lockdowns during COVID. So it had an impact on our actual targets. And what we tried to do was also then convert the training to COVID-19 awareness. But of course, we had some challenges as well in getting a proper portfolio of evidence on exactly what we did indeed attain. The last one is the functional cooperative established for the agrarian devolution projects. This was not achieved. We were supposed to, only 18 functional cooperatives were to be established. But the portfolio of evidence around the establishment of the cooperatives was not properly recorded. In fact, we only achieved much
Recording
less
in
than
progress.
18 that was initially planned. If we could move to the next slide, please. Okay, so we then move on to the financial outcomes as a result of the audit for 2020-21, the financial performance. So we received a qualified audit opinion, and the statements on the annual financial on the AFS were as follows. We had prepayments, and it related to prepayments and advances, the scope allocations, the CWP assets, and some disclosure notes. The Auditor General also made reference to the material irregularities that were identified in prior years. So just for the Audit Committee to also note that we actually had no material irregularities in the 2020-2021 financial year. So the ones that are listed are the 6 that had been identified. Of the 6, we had 4 to which the AG was satisfied with progress that had been made. 1 MI was also then closed, and there is 1 material irregularity that actually then relates to the payments of officials on parcel, and this is to do with double dipping, and the AG was not satisfied with progress that had been made in this regard. We are, however, being provided with an opportunity to actually conduct an investigation, and thereafter to then look at some critical steps that we would then need to undertake to ensure that we quantify whatever the amount is, and not only that, ensure that we recoup any monies that would have been received that were actually not due to the officials. If we could then move to the next slide, please. So when it comes to our appropriation statements, the department in this year received 106,942,000. And of that, the actual expenditure was 103,305,000 rand, which meant that we actually then expended 96.6%, rounded up 97% of our actual budget. If we then also look at this slide, what it does indicate is how the funding was actually allocated. So under administration, we received 301 million, which means that we have less than 5% of the budget being allocated to the department. The remainder of the funds, the remainder of the funds actually then are mainly linked to grants and transfers, and also to subsidies. If you could move to the next slide, please. Okay, so of the total revenue we received, we did then, the total transfers that we had made was 101 billion. The total expenditure was 103 billion, and then we were left with a surplus of 3.6 billion for the year. If we could then move to the next slide. When you look at the statement of our financial position of the 106 billion appropriation, compensation of employees spent was 326 million. In goods and services, we spent 1.5 billion. And then on the expenditure for capital assets, we spent 52.3 million. And then 101 billion was spent towards transfers and grants. And the surplus, as I said, was sitting at 3.6 billion. In the main, this related to the local government equitable share grants, which were withheld on account where DORA requirements were then not necessarily met. On the financial position, there was no movement on the old balance of unauthorized expenditure, which relates to expenditure that was incurred during the SAPO Commission, and the balance will be cleared after all the parliamentary scope processes are conducted. So included in the prepayments and advances is the amount of 62 million, down from about 235 million, which remained as unaccounted for as at the 31st of March. And the voted funds are to be surrendered, and the amount there is the 3.6 billion as reflected under the liabilities. If we could then move to the next slide, please. So on our disclosure notes, what we then specifically disclosed was the irregular expenditure, and the reasons for that are also cited. So we have to ensure that we looked then at the SCM processes that technically were not being followed, the CWP procurement and project management fees expenditure that was incurred for NPOs, and then just the restatement of the previous expenditure as a result of the Seriti court case. And then if you look at this also under the fruitless expenditure, this also was then more as a result of interest on overdue accounts, some cancellations with travel fees, and then also just the CWP deceased and PERSO participants expenditure. If we can then move to our final slide. It's just then for the portfolio committee to note the table DCOG annual performance report and the annual financial statements for the financial year 2020-2021. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, DG. My apologies. I have a network problem. I will request that Ndata Mpumza, Honorable Mpumza, Honorable Mpumza. Colleagues, will now go to the MISA presentation. The CEO, can you please start with the presentation?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Good afternoon to all the honorable members. Good afternoon to our Minister, DMs, DGs, and my colleagues. If we can be assisted with the sharing rights, Chair, my colleague Garfield Watboy will share the screen for us. Garfield, if you can put it on slideshow, please. Thank you very much, Chair. We are going to present to the Portfolio Committee our annual report for 2020-2021 financial year. We have an outline of our presentation. Next slide, Garfield. Which is, I'm not gonna go through, it's just 8 items which we will present to the Portfolio Committee. The next item, next slide. The purpose, Chair, is to brief the annual report for MISA as I've indicated, but in the main, give the highlights of our financial performance, as well as present the audit outcomes as it relates to both annual financial statement and our audit of predetermined objectives. Next slide. And our vision, mission, and mandate, Chair, has not changed. So I'm not going to bore the committee with that. I will take it as read. And next slide. As well as in terms of the key functions of MISA, Chair, I'm not going to go through the key functions. They are known. And I'm going to go straight to the summary of our performance against planned targets. In terms of the summary, Chair, as you also indicated in your opening remarks, MISA achieved 81% overall performance. That is 31 output indicators, 25 output indicators of the 31 output indicators, Chairperson, which is an improvement, of course, from the previous financial year where we achieved 79%. This is just a pie chart that indicates the performance. Next slide. Next slide, Garfield. If we, in terms of program 1 administration, we had 6 planned targets, and we've achieved all the 6 planned targets. We're just highlighting the key achievements for noting by the Portfolio Committee, which is the achievement of the unqualified audit opinion on our FS and the implementation of our approved communication strategy, risk and internal audit plans, as well as ICT operational plans and procurement plan. Next slide. Also, if you zoom into our main program, which is the technical support services, we had 19 planned targets, again below are just indicating the achievements, the 15 achievements, and I'm not next slide. Next slide, Garfield. And this is a continuation of the 15 achieved targets. And I'm not going to go through each of the achieved targets in the interest of time. Next slide. I will spend some time on the targets that were not achieved, Chair. We had a number of municipalities that were planned to support the implementation of infrastructure programs and projects through labor-intensive methods. This indicator, Chair, was not achieved mainly because the funding for it was transferred to us a bit late by National Treasury. It was transferred in February 2021, and we were left with only 1 month to appoint service providers, Chair. So that's why we're not able to achieve this particular target. So we rolled it over to the current financial year. And then the other one is the number of districts with improved MIG spending to at least 90%. We're indicating, Chair, that out of the 44 districts, the 90%, 11 districts that achieved the 90%. And the reason again for not achieving this indicator, Chair, of course, the challenges that are faced by our municipalities in terms of the financial management, notable delays in the procurement processes of municipalities had a huge impact on the achievement of this target, as well as the cash flow challenges that municipalities faced. And also lack of capacity in municipalities was also another factor, like a failure to manage projects throughout the project life cycle from on the MIS system. Was one of the major challenges that the municipalities faced. And of course, the challenges around the instability in some of the councils. Next slide. Also, the number of youth enrolled in the MISA Experiential Learnership Program. We had a plan of 70 youths enrolled, and the achievement they were able to enroll 30. And again, we had the challenge of a recruitment process, which was delayed due to COVID-19 restrictions, and the delay in the advertisement process, in the advertising, and the prolonged response handling that we had a challenge, as well as delayed in terms of the finalization of criminal record checks and verification of qualifications. So these are very key dependencies for us to achieve these targets, which unfortunately these were dependencies beyond our control. And we could not meet the target as planned. And next slide. Next, okay, no, sorry, covered. The number of youth also enrolled in the MISA Young Graduate program. We managed to enroll 104. Again, we had the same challenge that I've alluded to around the delayed advertisements, as well as the due to COVID-19, as well as the issue of verification. Next slide, Kavit. Okay, thank you very much, coming to the second core program of MISA, this, program 3. And we had the 6, we achieved 4, and as stated there, honorable members. I'm not going to go through the key achievements. I will take it as read. Then members, can we move then to the next slide? Next slide, Garfield. How we achieved targets. We had a number of districts that were to be supported with the implementation of long-term infrastructure investment plans under this program. And we had a target of assisting 5 district municipalities. And in this one, technically, I would say, but in the main, what we had planned to do, we did of the misalignment of our technical indicator description, the APP, where we indicated that the means of verification was to be the number of plans developed. And then this resulted in a non-achievement. But in terms of the providing support to the 5 districts on the identification of priority projects on the long-term plans of municipalities, that we did and facilitated that. And we had really no plan necessarily to develop new plans. The plan was to assist municipalities with the long-term plans of municipalities that were already identified. But due to the misalignment in the crafting of our technical indicator, AG found that, in fact, we felt that we cannot say we have achieved if we do not have plans that would say we have developed ourselves. So that's why we reflected this as not achieved. But the number of municipalities that were to be supported to prepare municipal infrastructure project plans to access funding earmarked for climate change mitigation and adaptation. Again, there we had a target of 5 municipalities, and we did indeed engage all the 5 municipalities that were targeted. But unfortunately, we could not conclude funding agreements between our states. We've got to conclude the funding agreements between them and the identified funders due to, of course, the delay in the submission of projects that could be considered for preparation for funding by municipalities. Next slide, Jacob. The next slide, were done in terms of the performance of the core programs and the social performance. The next slide talks to our response to COVID-19. As you'll recall, Chair, when we were hit by COVID-19, there was a call for reprioritization of funds towards a response to COVID-19. MISA mobilized funding within its own resources towards that, and also mobilized funding from DPSA, as well as the other department like COGTA, KZN, as part of the response to COVID-19. So MISA, we managed to put aside 48 million, and DPSA put aside 41 million pensions in 7 provinces, drilling of boreholes, purchasing of water tankers and construction of pump houses, equipping of various refurbishment of existing boreholes, and we also did some water redistribution projects which we handed over last year, as well as upgrading of wastewater treatment works. So about 235 boreholes, Chairperson, were drilled, which benefited a number of households out of the work that we did across the 6 districts and municipalities. Also, in terms of our 2021 COVID intervention as well, there is a continuation of where we continue the drilling and equipment, and there's a project that we're completing now in a place called Mondlo in Nabatulus in KZN, where we are refurbishing, we are upgrading the wastewater. This project is almost complete. I think it's sitting at over 9 before the end of this year. Am I still on this where I am? Okay. No, thanks. Thanks, Chairperson. In terms of the financial performance, Chair, as at 31 March 2021, Chairperson, our current assets were sitting at 218 million, and the non-current assets at 22.81 million, and we had current liabilities of 49.10 million, and we had 0.77 million. The common and cash equivalents, the Chairperson will wonder why there is so much money in our bank at the end of March. You will see that we had an increase in our cash balance due to late transfer of the labor-intensive construction per method funds, but which were made available to us in February. Challenges in terms of COVID-19, you remember, Chair, the delays that we experienced in the construction sector because of the lockdown. We also, this affected us huge in terms of implementation of projects, and resulted in the expenditure that you alluded to as challenges in terms of the delays on the required. Sure. Next slide, Kafil, can you hear? Okay, thank you very much. Moving with our financial performance in terms of our income for the 2021 financial year, we had 395.94 million made out of the 389 transfer from the department, as well as 619 million, which were and the funding we received from LGC. And we managed to spend 265 million of that, and out of which 172 was employee costs, and 5 million were depreciation, and the 54 million were contracted services, and also the finance cost of 0.52, and general services of 32.15 million. And again, there you will expenditure on the financial year due to a number of learners and delays on the recruitment due to COVID-19 and lockdown. And also in terms of the contracted services, you'll see the expenditure in 2020 was a bit higher as compared to the 2021, as I've alluded to earlier, because of the delays in the implementation of projects, due to COVID-19 lockdown. And next slide. And also in terms of the budget variance report, I'm not going to spend much time on this one. So we're just indicating we are indicating that we had a budget of 71 million and we spent 32 million, and we had an under expenditure of 39 million then. And the variance again is due to under expenditure in various accounts, and the major variances were realized in training, bursaries and subsistence and travel, which again were constrained by the issue of lockdown in terms of travel, and also if you look into the contracted services, I've already alluded to. For again, the issue of the 50 million LIC allocation contributed to this high expenditure, as well as the delay in terms of the implementation of the running projects. And also in terms of the employee costs, and the variance again there of 36 million is due to staff challenges, as you know, staff turnover, as you know, engineering professionals, you know, and there we had those challenges left easily, quickly. So we did experience those challenges. Hence, our expenditure did not really improve as we would have expected. And also in terms of the depreciation, the variance, of course, is due to less asset purchases and reassessments, which led to lower. Next slide. And the chairperson, if you look at the 422 million, I'm sure the members will say, but no budget, we had 422 million. This is now including the previous 98 million chairperson, which was retained in the previous financial year, that is 2019-20. So we had that opening balance in 2018, in 2019-20 of 98 million. Hence, our budget total there reflect 422 instead of 395 million. So indicating the receipts there in terms of our cash flow and bank record of 395 million, which was what 18 million entire funds and interest, and we're indicating payments there of -1. Next slide, Kafit. In our next slide, we're indicating the status in terms of fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And we also reflect on the issue of irregular expenditure, and we underline the fact that we did not incur any irregular expenditure during the 2020-2021 financial year. And in terms of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure, this one is, of course, prior year expenditure of 757,000, which relates to SARS penalties and interest. It's a prior year. It did not happen in the current financial year. And then we also the start overpayment. It's a prior year as well. We're reflecting it, as well as interest charge for TV licenses is a prior year as well. It did not happen this financial year. What happened this financial year was the finance charge, which were reflecting there of 525,000. This relate to a litigation matter that was concluded this financial year relating to the travel agency, which we had sued us because of a dispute that arose as a result of travel fraud, which we were challenging that we cannot pay them on the basis that our view was that we incurred this fraud under their management. Their employees were part of it. Of course, the employees of the department colluded with them. So our view was we are both victims of that particular fraud. Therefore, we cannot be held liable for invoices that were as a result of fraud claims. So the court unfortunately found we were not successful in this case, but we're not successful because of the laxity on the part of the lawyers who represented us, as well as the state attorney. So it's a matter that we are handling with the state attorney. We have also escalated the matter to the Legal Practice Council. We have reported the attorneys who represented us in this matter because we lost because of a default judgment and the failure to file papers for the rescission of that judgment. And then the judgment was taken against us in absentia. So this is where the matter is currently being handled through the Legal Practice Council. And we're claiming against the insurance of the attorneys that they need to be liable and pay us back the costs that we've incurred in this particular matter. Next slide. This slide talks to the 30 days payments. We're showing payments over 30 days versus payment that we did under 30 days are paid under 30 days. There were very little, in fact, invoices where we did not meet the 30-day period by a chairperson, which happened in September, June, and April. Next slide. In terms of the audit outcome trends, we're indicating, Chair, that for the past 3 years now, we have managed to secure clean audit outcomes. And we are happy to report that, which is a huge improvement for MISA, if you look into where we're coming from, Chairperson. Next slide. And in this slide, we are just indicating our audit action plan issues that were raised as concerning by AG in 20 area was the procurement and contract management. And there were issues relating to internal control deficiencies, which were not being aware that they should maintain evidence of downtime of the system when attempting to publish the awards on the tender to support their compliance with the National Instruction number 1 of 2019-20. And also the management not ensuring that evidence to support the submission to DTI is filed and stored centrally. That was one of the issues. And the issue of adequate supporting evidence that is not necessarily maintained or filed to support tax verification checks. We've since addressed these concerns around these concerns. The IT cyber security as well. The issue of systems limitation was also raised, and also the issue of inadequate IT disaster recovery was raised, and the issue of payment to supplier not made within 30 days was raised. So I'm saying we've since addressed all these particular challenges, Chairperson. And next slide. And in terms of the summary of the AG's findings currently for the 2020-2021, we're saying the issue of where the number of findings and the equipment, one finding, correction of in terms of the procurement and contract management. This one is audit. This one as well has been addressed. So out of the 4 findings, 3 are now green. And next slide. Also, we're just giving progress in terms of the HR. We're saying out of the staff establishment of 221, 171 posts, and the key, of course, Chair, if I may report, is the 33 out of 36 posts for senior management posts as at end of the financial year. But we had also, when we report next year, we'll indicate that the DDG post has since been filled. Now the top management post at MISA is totally filled, and we are happy to report that. And of course, we still have the challenges around the appointment of engineers, and the fluctuation, they come and they leave, and so there's a challenge we're having there. So out of 84 posts, we have now 69 posts that those posts immediately as they leave, and then we move with speed to replace them. Equity targets, in terms of the people with disability, with a target of 2%, and we managed to achieve 1% of that. At the issue of women, at an SMS level, we have managed to achieve 50-50%. And the vacancy rate also, we managed to reduce it by 1 percentage point from 24% to now 23%. Next slide. In terms of the recommendations, Chair, for the committee we recommend the committee to note the MISA overall achievement of 81%, and also the agency to note the fact that we managed to again retain our unqualified audit opinion without any material findings, and also we note the institutional response to COVID-19 pandemic, and because the deficiencies that were identified by AG are being addressed by management through the implementation of remedial actions in the post-audit action plan, and also the committee staff capacity. Thank you very much, Chairperson. This is our last slide. I'm done, Chairperson. Chair, I'm not sure if I'm still audible.
Yes, you are, CEO. Chairperson.
Thank you,
Chairperson.
CEO. My network is still bad, honorable members. On the program that you have adopted, we have agreed that we'll have 2 presentation and discussion. So I just want to check with you if we should proceed with the program as it is, or maybe we can allow the DTA to do its presentation so that when we go to the discussion, we discuss all the 3 presentation, or should we stick to the initial program that you have adopted, initial agenda that you have adopted?
Chairperson.
Honorable Kaza.
I move that we allow the DTA to then present so that we can then deal with their presentations holistically.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Kaiser. Now we are going to allow the Department of Traditional Affairs to present, and after their presentation, we'll then go to the discussion. DG, the floor is yours. Can you please start with the presentation?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, honorable members of the committee, the Honorable Minister and Honorable Deputy Ministers. I'll just ask for assistance with the presentation. Mr. Mashishi, it can be on the projected on the screen, please. Thank you. So in terms of the, is it coming through?
DG, we just would like to, through you, DG, ask the colleagues to stop sharing.
Okay.
Is it visible?
Not yet. I don't know on my screen. It is not visible as yet.
Yeah, it's not visible.
Perhaps colleagues from the PC who are maintaining the system can assist.
Yes, yes. If Shireen could please assist in the.
Is it visible, DG?
Indeed, it is visible from my side now. If I may proceed, Honorable Chair. Mr. Mashishi, if you go to the next slide, this is the annual report of the Department of Traditional Affairs for the 2020-2021 financial year, which was tabled in Parliament. And this is just an outline that shows what the presentation will deal with. Primarily, it will be the summary of our performance for the year. We'll deal with the specific targets that were achieved during the year, and then we'll look at financial performance for the 2020-2021 financial year as well, and then recommendations to the committee. Next slide. On this slide, we just it's just a reminder to the honorable members in terms of the vision, mission of the Department of Traditional Affairs, as well as the values that inform the manner in which we carry out our work. But then we'll then move on to the next slide so that we can focus on the actual performance for the year. So we'll just start with a table that provides a summary in terms of the various programs that we have: administration, research policy and legislation, institutional support and coordination, and then of course the National House of Traditional Leaders. So it just shows that all the targets that we had for the 2020-2021 financial year were achieved. But then we'll then in the next slides just go into the details of those. This is really just a pie chart that shows the information from the previous page in a different manner on the pie chart. But the next slide then it goes into actual performance. The honorable members might recall that what we've done is we have two main plans that we develop under administration. There's a plan that we call Organizational Performance Information Compliance Management Plan, and it deals with all the key issues that we need to comply with in relation to human resource management and all the related areas. So we say that we then have to achieve targets within that plan, and that at least 80% of them should be achieved. And indeed that was achieved. We've done the same with the finance one, so the issues relating to supply chain management, payment of suppliers within 30 days and so on, they all form part of what we call a corporate and financial management compliance plan. And there again, we said we have to make sure that we as a minimum achieve 80% of the actions that are contained in that plan. So that is in terms of administration. The next program is research policy and legislation. One of the focal areas here is that of conducting research. Annually, we identify 1 or 2 research projects that we pursue in this area to enrich our understanding of what is happening in the sector. In this particular case, we were looking at the coexistence of the institutional traditional leadership within a constitutional democracy, that the research should be done in this regard, and a report produced, and that indeed was done. On the next slide, and we're still staying with the program of research policy and legislation, we had previously reported to the committee about an information management framework that we had developed for the sector, where we say this is the minimum information that is needed about the sector in each one of the provinces. And then we said we will then work with provinces to make sure that they are in a position to collate information based on that framework. We targeted 8 provinces, and that was achieved as well. We were able to workshop all the 8 provinces on that. We also have a framework on resolution of traditional disputes and claims, which guides provinces on how they should go about dealing with the leadership disputes and claims. And what we then do is we targeted that throughout the year. We will then monitor how the provinces are doing in this regard, obtain information on progress that the provinces are making in this regard, and then be able to make recommendations where there are gaps and delays in the finalization of this, working with the 8 provinces in which the institutional traditional leadership exists. So that was done as well, that monitoring process. The next slide. This slide takes forward the work that was done previously, where we had conducted research on the roles and functions of traditional leadership. And we said we will move beyond the research now and convert it into a draft discussion document, so that once it is adopted within government, it can then be used as a basis for engagement with the rest of the sector and other stakeholders. So that discussion document was developed. The next program is that of institutional support and coordination. And in this area, we had previously done work on a pilot of what we call an agrarian revolution program, where a few projects were funded. Having learned out of that experience, where we said that we will then focus on revising the agrarian revolution program model, so that we build the lessons that we learned from the pilots into a model that then becomes the basis for a future implementation. And so that was done. We had also targeted that from our side, we will work with 10 traditional communities in the area of socio-economic development programs, focusing specifically on food security program. But we were then, I think, based on the unfortunate experience of COVID-19, it also came with an opportunity where, through a partnership with the Solidarity Fund, more resources were made available. And so, working with the institution of traditional leadership, each one of the TCs was included, as opposed to the initial plan of having 10 only. So that's just the huge difference there that we are reflecting, because of the opportunity that came about when the Solidarity Fund partnered with us and the National House of Traditional and Kwestan Leaders. The local houses of traditional and Kwestan leadership, we've indicated to the committee before that this basically becomes the equivalent of a district structure in a municipality. The equivalent of that structure for institution of traditional leadership is the local house. And the local house then becomes a very key entry point for working with all the partners within the district development model. So we'd said that we will work with all the local houses, monitor the extent to which they are participating in the district development model, working with provinces in this regard, and we're able to do that. We were targeting 30, but in actual implementation, we were able to add 2 more, covering all the local houses of traditional leadership and producing reports on their level of participation in the district development model. On the next slide, this was about capacity building. We worked on a development of a capacity building program. We've got new legislation, as the honorable members would know, the Traditional Inquiries and Leadership Act. And so a program was developed around that act to make sure that capacity can be created. And so that was achieved during the course of the financial year. And then the issue of social cohesion during the course of the financial year focused more on issues relating to cultural practices within the context of COVID-19. So you've got the regulations, you've got directions relating to cultural events, funerals, and so on and so on. And you said, let's then have a program where we monitor in all the provinces, working with the houses of traditional leadership, the extent to which there is adherence in terms of funerals, the COVID regulations, and so on. This slide, then the next slide, Honorable Chair, talks specifically to the National House of Traditional Inquiries and Leaders. The target there was in relation to safe initiation practices, as an issue that the Honorable Chair raised in her opening remarks. And the focus here was on making sure that awareness campaigns are run throughout the country, so one per province, so that you have 9 in all awareness campaigns that get conducted. And then, of course, the House also partners with us in the work that we're doing on monitoring the implementation of COVID-19 regulations on customary initiation. This then now takes us to financial performance. The overall allocation for the department, as reflected there, 161.685 million and then the split according to programs, Program 1, Administration, Program 2, Research, Policy and Legislation, Program 3, Institutional Support and Coordination. The split is reflected there, and the extreme right column just showing the expenditure, that the overall expenditure was 85.1% with the variance of 24.162 million. And at the bottom of that, it's the same information, but captured in terms of economic classification to show how much for compensation of employees, goods and services, transfer payments, and of course that transfer to the CRL Rights Commission is reflected here as well, but the figures then totaling again overall expenditure of 85.1% and the underspending of 24.1 million. So here we really just then indicating the reasons for the underspending. It was a very difficult year. My 2 colleagues who presented before me have spoken about how COVID-19 also affected their operations. That has affected us as well. So if you look at compensation of employees, one of the things we had budgeted for was that there will be commissioners employed for the Commission on Quaison Matters. But as members would know, the Act only came into effect on the 1st of April this year, which means during the 2020-2021 financial year, it was not going to be possible for the Honorable Minister to appoint the commission, but in anticipation for the commission being appointed, we had reserved funds for that purpose. But then also just in terms of our own operations, because physical meetings couldn't take place, travel for officials, for training programs, for workshops, all those kinds of things, everything had to be done virtually. So all those kinds of things then delayed the spending and led to the kind of underspending that we see as indicated in this. The next slide just shows audit outcomes. I think the Honorable Minister indicated this earlier as well in her remarks, just going back to 2016, 2017 up to now. So this effectively been the 5th consecutive year in which the department gets an unqualified audit outcome with no findings, both in terms of performance information as well as financial performance. That's the presentation, Honorable Chair, Honorable Members, and we recommend that the committee notes this report on performance as well as financial management. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I am done, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, honorable members. I will now allow space for engagement. Can you please do it by show of hands so that we can note honorable members who have questions and clarity seeking questions? Honorable Mpumza, are you here?
Chair.
I told you, Honorable Mpumza, that I have a network problem. As and when I'm not here, can you please assist the meeting? Honorable Kaiser, you are noted, you are number 1. Honorable Kunevald, you are number 2. Honorable Brink, you are number 3. Honorable Mpumza, can you please assist me where I encounter challenges because network is very bad where I am. Honorable Hadebe, you are number 4. In that order, honorable members.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the committee of the session. The first thing that I would want to speak to is the presentation on traditional affairs. 13 initiates in the Eastern Cape have lost their lives. 13 initiates has lost their lives.
Babethe Xeza bayakuphazamisa apha endlini babethe. Babethe.
Zababetha ngoku. 13 initiates had lost their lives in the Eastern Cape. We had a meeting with the provincial leadership here in the committee, and we spoke to these things. And has the Department of Traditional Affairs held any of those who had called for the lifting of the ban on initiation accountable and liable for these debts, as the minister had promised to do? Furthermore, what intervention is the department contemplating to address the challenge pertaining to within the annual report notes that as a result of apartheid legislation which provided for recognition of traditional leaders and their communities without a concomitant action, need to establish a tribal authority and define the area of jurisdiction. There are consequently 9 landless traditional leaders in Mpumalanga province, 28 in KwaZulu-Natal, and 2 in Free State. What intervention is the department contemplating to address this challenge? And then can the department be more specific to the various means being pursued to address the financial constraints in terms of the department's capacity, in terms of human and financial resources? And then I think this is the last one. In terms of the department, further reports that in partnership with the Solidarity Fund, it implemented food and input voucher projects, benefiting 20,000 households and 45,000 small-scale farmers. I think we discussed this previously again. In the meeting there on the 23rd of February 2021, the committee learned that the value of each voucher amounted to 2,000 each for each emerging farmer. Is the department confident that these vouchers provided meaningful benefit, particularly to small-scale farmers? And then I will move to MISA, Chairperson, if you bear with me. MISA, your mandate is premised on the enhancement of local government to enable the delivery of reliable infrastructure for sustainable provision of basic services. And your key focus in your forward COO speaks to the in the previous year, financial year, your focus was to accelerate water and sanitation. My question is to you, if this is the case, why is that most of the municipalities, particularly in rural areas, such as your Dr. J.S. Muroka in Mpumalanga, your Ligwa, your Govenbeck in Ngushwa municipality, and so forth, Emakazeni, Beasnodie, Amatole was here in the committee. We spoke about the issue of water under Amatole district, that the inavailability of water completely. If this is the case, why is that this obtains? Why is this that you do not seem to get around fixing quality roads and boreholes in such municipalities, if your duty is to then support the implementation of the MIG and also the infrastructure backlogs in the like areas across the country? And then that's me, sir, Chairperson. I just wanted to speak to the department, and I didn't want to shy away from my initial questions because the chairperson of the committee said that, but we have the department coming to us in the afternoon. So my first question remains that what are the agreed timeframes and budget set cases within the community works program? Irregular expenditure, irregular, fruitless, wasteful, and unauthorized expenditure. What mechanisms has that department put in place to minimize the investigation period? What harsher punitive measures has the department put in place against corruption and preempting corruption and the corruptibility of the procurement process in terms of the tenders, in terms of the service providers that are not giving us value for money? What are the impediments in terms of the consequence management within the department? Because earlier on, the Auditor General spoke to that there's chronic lack of consequences within the department. Do you have any monitoring mechanism in the department to strengthen and ultimately in-source participants within the CWP in municipalities? I heard the minister said that the DG saying that you've got paying directly, you've got paying participants directly from the department. But now that there is no middleman between the department, DG, who was initially paying the participants, has the situation improved in terms of remunerating those participants. That is my question on that. And how many government employees that are confirmed to have unduly benefited or on double dipping in the CWP that the investigating find responsible? Why has it taken long to prosecute the culprits? What measures has the department put in place in ensuring that appropriate action is taken on the non-qualifying government employees on CWP, resulting in Auditor General's recommendation, hence recover the financial losses suffered by the department? Then the concerning question that I have that was raised by Honorable Khalid is that, Chairperson, the department is busy recruiting currently, and a person in question is actually demanding lucrative amounts given the resources that are available. What then is, because the Auditor General complains about the department obtaining unqualified audits repeatedly. So what is the value, what will that contribute, how will that contribute to turning around the department on its, because given, I mean, we are getting qualified audits all the time, and we don't seem to come out of that as a department. And I'm wondering, given the recruitment of more staff, what are the reasons, and what is the value that will be brought about in terms of the audit outcomes, and what processes have been followed to recruit people additionally to the establishment. Now, that's what I want to ask on that. And then the slide 9 speaks to the IDP and one plans alignment framework developed and circulated to all municipalities. My question to that is whether the department how will the department ensure that all priorities within the IDP are implemented within set timeframes in municipalities? Because you find that even though the communities have set out the priorities and consultative process have been put in place, you then find those priorities not implemented within the agreed period. The DG speaks on slide 14 about the lack of portfolio of evidence on the initial training that was supposed to have been done, that is now replaced by COVID-19 awareness training. And she says there is no portfolio of evidence. You mean, DG, you can't even take selfies there or photos on that day? Does the department actually conduct anything, any program without portfolio of evidence? I fail to believe that, and I feel manipulated because I do not think that is proper. Just to come to the committee and tell us that there is no portfolio of evidence, it can't be. It cannot be. How much did it cost the department, the awareness on its own? Did you have to use the resources that were used, that were initially going to, that would have initially been used to train the participants? That's what I want to ask. And then I think I'll end up here, Chairperson, just to give other honorable members ample time to ask questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Gaza. Honorable Funevald.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, yes, I've been covered a lot by Keza. So let me just start where he stopped. If I go to DCOG, on your slide 12, it says 5.1, repairs on water infrastructure. Chairperson, I would like to ask if the department will be so kind as to give us a list of water infrastructure repairs that they've done. Secondly, what is meant with sanitizing infrastructure? It sounds as if they've built some, can I say, factories in reducing sanitation. So if they can just give clarity in terms of that. Then in terms of your one plan, it was on the slides as well. Due to the Systems Act, the department follow public participation. If you go and look at your Systems Act, it says that any plan being implemented in a municipality must be public, must be going through public participation processes. So I want to find out if they done that or how did they get around that. Then in terms of MISA, on slide 13, it is sad that the plans couldn't have been developed. If I remember correctly, in the previous BRRR report, it was also said that they could not done this. So the question will be is, how is it that in 2 years, 5 municipalities with MISA support could not get this done? I think this is quite an important part if you want to do infrastructure or maintain or, can I say, create infrastructure, you must at least have a plan on how you're going to do that. And 5 municipalities is not that much. Why does it take that long? If the department can explain this, because that gives me more or less an idea why the service delivery does not get to the people, because the things it's taking too long to get done. Then in terms of your slide 14, in terms of interventions, you say that you report where, can I say, you've done a lot of boreholes. If the department can give us a report on where these boreholes were done. And Chairperson, I need the locations because there's a lot of departments doing boreholes, and I'm of view that some of departments, can I say, different departments in different levels of government is claiming for the exact same borehole. So I want to go and check. So if the department can give us a list and exact location of each of the boreholes that has been done. Then also a report on what existing boreholes were refurbished for exactly the same reason. There's provincial departments that's also claiming they've got invoices for doing boreholes and refurbishing old boreholes. But Chairperson, if you go and look across South Africa on how many boreholes has been done, I can't understand why there's not enough water and service delivery is not being done. So Chair, I want those reports. Where and what did you do on water retangulation system and what upgrading of wastewater treatment works were done, and a clear cost report on each of these above. Chairperson, I know it's a lot of questions being, or can I say a lot of information being asked, but I think the department can give it to us within 7 days, as they already should have a report on those. So if they can compile it for us and give it to us in 7 days. Then on the previous meeting as well, Chairperson, they said that they're going to have a circular being compiled by different departments on the filling of vacant senior posts prior to the local government election as well as post. I just want to find out if that has been done, and if so, can they send us the circular as well? Thank you, Chair. I'll pause there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Groenewald. Honorable Brink.
Thank you, Chair. At the start of the meeting, I had a bit of a connectivity issue, so I'm not sure if the Minister has had an opportunity to speak and I had missed that opportunity. The concern that I do want to express is a sense of lack of urgency and seriousness around the fact that the Department of Cooperative Governance has once again failed to achieve at least an unqualified audit. And tied to that, the failure to deal with the Community Works program or to develop an alternative model that is going to escape the incurring irregular expenditure as it has for the past 5 or 6 or 7 years. Did I understand the presentation by the DG correctly that the qualified audit is regarded as an achievement, or did I somehow not interpret that correctly? There was a slide on achievements, and then the qualified audit counted as an achievement. According to my reading of how it was presented, I hope I was wrong. Can we just have a clarification on that? Because surely a qualified audit is not an achievement. And then tied to that, Chairperson, I just want to know from the Minister whether there are going to be any consequences for the failure of the Department of Cooperative Governance to achieve that clean, or not a clean audit, but unqualified audit, at least an unqualified audit. Are there going to be any consequences? What are those consequences going to be? And the Honourable Groenewald has asked a question that I wanted to ask, but perhaps just to emphasize the importance of it. Before any one plan is implemented in a particular municipality, surely there must be public participation and extensive public participation, because it is assumed that large parts of the IDP and the budget, which has already gone out to public participation, will be affected, if not subsumed by the one plan. Thanks very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Brink. Honorable Mpumza.
Thank you, Chairperson. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, I have been kicked out several times. I have a problem of network and the blackouts and all that. Nonetheless, Chair, Chair, and the DG and the two DGs. Chair, my concern has been the Auditor General's report that the department stagnated on qualification. But of particular concern is that the Auditor General is raising very, very serious critical issues. That the accounting office and senior management are not in a position to provide quality assurance on the financial statement. So that is a high concern to me. And at the same time, they are indicating that why the department is stagnating is because then it goes to the asset register, because it reflects that the main qualifying factor are the TPEs. And then it tells you that then we will need to be seriously as the department looking around that matter as management. But Chair, nonetheless, the presentation indicates that the department had actually, out of the allocated budget, it had spent almost 96.6%, and it had achieved 68% targets. The question, therefore, it says that what had been the compelling reasons for the department not to achieve 100% of its own targets? What were the compelling reasons that it had achieved almost lost 10 of those targets that it had not achieved? Can you explain what were the compelling reasons for the department not to achieve 100% on its targets? And at the same time, we're getting a sense that the Disaster Management Center has only half of its allocated budget of 633.9 million. Could it then be explained as to, despite the fact that there have been trials in some provinces, there have been demand for this intervention, why has the department not actually spent its overall budget on the disaster management center? Chair, those are my few intervening questions at the moment. Thanks, Chair. President God. Hello, Chair. Yeah.
Are you driving, Honorable Mpukuza?
Yes. I'm driving, Honorable.
I think I was the next. Maybe the chair is struggling with the network. Can I proceed?
My network is bad, colleagues. Honorable Hadebe.
Can I proceed, Chair? Honorable Chairperson.
Colleagues, I've indicated that my network is bad. Can the next speaker come to my rescue? Honorable Hadebe.
Yes, Chair, I'm not sure whether I'm audible or not. Can fellow members hear me?
Audible, Honorable Hadebe.
Okay, no, thanks. I was worried that I'm talking to myself. Chair, I'd like to follow on from what Auditor General has raised this morning, which are issues that we were meant to follow up this afternoon. Indeed, it's true that the main cause for a qualified audit, it's a CWP program. Earlier this morning, the Auditor General indicated that the department had at some point gave a commitment that it was going to reconcile and account for each and every transaction that occurred in the previous contract that was declared unconstitutional and invalid by the court, with an intention to make sure that whatever that was due to the department will be recovered from the retention balance, which is withheld from each and every invoice. The question that I would like to get an understanding on, has that exercise been undertaken? The second issue that I would like to get clarity on, which was also raised by the Auditor General this morning, it's in relation to assets register and lack of record keeping. And there was an indication that the department is required to physically verify the assets and reconcile with the records at their disposal to confirm whether or not what they have within their records, it's within the custody of this implementing agency. So one would like to get a sense and understanding as to what processes and controls have been put in place to ensure that there is a credible and accurate record keeping and information at the disposal of the department. when they transfer and close out the contract to start the new one. Because that was an issue that was flagged by the Auditor General as an issue or area of concern. Because what we want to see, Chair, ultimately, it's the proper record keeping and that all assets are accounted for, and the department is in a position to know what asset belongs to who in terms of these implementing agencies. Chair, the third issue in relation to lack of record keeping, it appears as if within the current financial year or the year under review, those that are responsible for approving and making payments, they still process payment without adequate supporting document to support the invoices submitted. I would like to get a sense and understanding, is this still happening where the financials are being processed and paid to implementing agencies without the proper record keeping? And if that's the case, has the DG as an accounting officer implemented consequence management in this regard to ensure that there is zero tolerance in terms of non-compliance and non-performance? And if that's not happening, why is it not happening, Honorable Chair? The last issue also raised this morning, the AG indicated that they could not establish within the audit processes that the department has implemented consequence management to those that have incurred irregular expenditure. There was no evidence that seeks to suggest that disciplinary actions were taken. Why is this the case? Those are the few issues that I wanted to raise, Chair, in relation to what the Auditor General have raised this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Atebe. Honorable Teza, I see your hand is still up. You still want to come back?
It's a legacy hand, Chair.
That is a legacy, and that's very good.
Yes.
Can we now allow the department to come in with responses to the questions? DG.
Good afternoon, Chair, and I want to say thank you to all the honourable members for the questions. Chair, I'm joined by the department's team, so I would like to give each of them an opportunity to respond to the questions that are relevant to their programs or to their units, and I will then come in where I believe I need to then add in. So perhaps, Chair, if I could then ask that we start with all questions that relate to the CWP, and thereafter we can go to all questions that relate to the local government. So I'll start with Peter, and then we can call in Themba, and then we can call in the CFO, and then I will wrap up. Thank you so much, Chair. If I could then hand over.
All right, proceed, DG.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, DG. Good afternoon, Chair and honourable members. I will be talking to the questions related to the CWP. So the first questions, Honourable Teza. So there are definite agreed timeframes within which we have to resolve all the audit findings raised by the Auditor General in relation to the CWP. We developed a audit plan to respond to all the findings. This has already gone through our audit committee and we are implementing the plan. The deadline for some of them have already come. We've already met some of the targets, and the majority of them will then be finalized between now and the end of the financial year.
Your call has been
Um,
placed on hold. Please wait.
We are placed on hold.
Yeah, sorry, looks like I didn't pay my bill and I was cut off, Chair, but it looks like we are back. Thanks. So there's been a number of officials that has been charged in relation to CWP related matters. So there has definitely been consequences management. A forensic report was completed towards the middle of the previous the last calendar year. And based on that report, 7 officials were charged. 1 official passed away, could not be charged, or 7 officials were identified, 1 official passed away, it could not be charged. Of the 6 other officials, 3 of the cases have been finalized, and 1 of them was found guilty. We are waiting for the sanction. On the other 3 cases, the other 3 are senior managers, and this is ongoing. They are slightly more complex since it involves legal representation, but they are ongoing, and we hope for the next round of hearings to take place in the next month. The same report was also handed over to the Hawks. The entire report was handed over to the Hawks, and they are busy investigating, and obviously they will decide which cases they want to pursue and which of the issues raised in the report they want to pursue. Given the amounts involved, we suspect that they will pursue quite a number of issues coming out from the report, since most of them are above the 100,000 limit identified in PRECA, where we are required them to report and follow up on possible fraud cases. As far as double dipping is concerned, there's about 3,500 employees that have been identified for possible double dipping. This, however, is an issue of significant concern to the department, as these can be actually divided into 3 categories. The first category are those people that are permanently employed in government, and it's very clear that they should not have benefited from the CWP, and we will, as required by the Auditor General, follow up and make sure that any CWP funds recovered are actually that paid to them are actually recovered. The second category are people that are not full-time employed in government. And this, unfortunately, is where there's a little bit of a gray area in the actual policy. As officials, we cannot say that if you are not full-time employed, that you are not allowed to participate in CWP. So the vast majority of these people identified were actually community health workers and such that had temporary positions in government. And they only worked a few days a week or a few days a month in government. And as officials, we don't have any legal basis to then say to those people that they may not participate in the CWP, since there's no cut of income for participating in the CWP. The CWP policy clearly states that it's for both unemployed and underemployed, which would imply that it's anybody that's not full-time employed. So we do aim to address this when we update the policy framework in future. But for now, this is a matter that we still need to discuss with the Auditor General to clarify at what point the Auditor General decided that the minimum wage should be the cutoff. But even for that, there's no legal basis that we can actually tell somebody that they must pay back the money. So for those that are full-time employed in government, that's clear that they are not allowed to have additional income, and definitely also not allowed to benefit from the CWP program. And we will follow the recovery process for them. Those who are part-time employed in government, we are busy getting detailed data from National Treasury, so we can look at a month-to-month basis whether or not they earned money in both places. The data provided by the Auditor General only gave us an annual amount, and we have to look at this on a month-to-month basis, because if we want to do recovery, obviously from a legal point of view, we have to be quite clear where somebody benefited from both sides. We cannot make allegations without providing the evidence. Then on the issue of appointing more staff, at least in the case of the CWP, it's very important that we have better oversight over the NPOs. So any staff that we appoint there aims at improving our oversight over the NPOs. And then the POE for training. The non-profit organization submitted documents to us claiming that a certain number of participants were trained. However, we will not accept that and we will not pay them for that unless they provide us with proof. And the proof that they need to provide us is a signed attendance register. So even though they claimed that the 25,000 were trained, when we verified the actual evidence submitted by them, we found that it was less than 25,000, which means we didn't meet the target. And of course, if they can't provide evidence that the training was conducted, we will also not pay them for the training. So that is because we have very stringent measures in place now to make sure that we only pay valid invoices and that the correct POE is attached to invoices before we pay them. Then from Honorable Brink, I think I addressed the issue on consequences. So there's definitely consequences involved, not necessarily related to the audit outcome, but in cases where we do not follow the audit plans and in cases where we have repeat findings. I think the Minister alluded to this, that some of the issues we're trying to address in the CWP are legacy issues. They've been around for quite a long time. And the Auditor General, by out of the 6 material irregularities, on 5 of them, the Auditor General was very comfortable with the progress we've been making. So I think by indicating that, they acknowledge that we are making progress, we are putting the correct procedures in place. And the only thing that has not happened by the end of the previous financial year is those procedures have not actually resulted in the desired outcome. So we are confident that by the end of this financial year, the fruits of our labor will clearly show that these procedures that we've put in place will actually have an impact. And then we have actually, one of the main concerns we had in the CWP is that the primary guiding document was the old CWP manual, was outdated. It was approved in 2014. We have since, with effect from 1 October, when the new contracts came into place, put in place a new CWP implementation policy. And one of the purposes of this policy is then to address all the gray areas and gaps, to make it very clear to implementing agents what they are required to do when they do procurement, and to also put much more stringent regulations in place to make sure that NPOs cannot claim for expenditure if they do not have, if they not follow the proper process and they have not attached the appropriate documentation. So these are all things that took some time to put in place, but they have since been put in place. And we are confident then that it will clearly show when we get to the next end of this financial year that there's been a significant improvement in the audit outcomes of the department. So, Honorable Mpumza, yes, from a pure audit perspective, it does appear as if the department has stagnated. But as we said, that when we joined the department, some of us joined closer to the beginning and some of us closer to the end of the financial year that's under review. There were still a lot of things that needed to be put in place. And I think the Auditor General did acknowledge that those things have since been put in place, which is why they are comfortable with our progress on the MIs. It's just that as at 31 March, those measures have not yet had the desired impact because they've not been in place for long enough. But we hope then that by the end of this financial year, or we are confident that by the end of this financial year, those measures that we have put in place will then actually have had an impact and will have significantly reduced the audit findings related to the CWP. So, Honorable Hadebe, yes, there are now very specific procedures in place. NPOs have to account for every transaction. We have completed a detailed reconciliation of all transactions. This has been audited by the Auditor General, and they are comfortable that this can be used to then finalize what the NPOs owe us or what we owe them at the end of the contract period. The asset register is a significant concern for us, and that's one of the 2 main reasons why we get qualified on the CWP. It is unfortunate that since the inception of the CWP in 2014, there's been almost no asset management. There was no proper asset register kept. So what we are trying to do is catch up and make up for almost a decade of poor asset management. We do have a process in place currently where we are approaching this from 3 sides. So we have a service provider that's helping us with our staff to go into the field and verify assets on the ground. That has been 95% complete already. We also have a process where we have the NPOs before we will pay them. So during the contract period, we retained a portion of their project management fees. And before we pay out that portion that we've retained, they have to account for all assets. They have to clear all outstanding balances. They have to submit all documents that's required to be submitted, so that we do not have the situation again where there's an issue with missing documents and that it then leads to a finding pointing to a lack of record keeping where those records were supposed to be kept by the NPOs. So we will not be paying out any of the retained project management fees until all of those have been submitted and verified, and we are sure that the asset register we are compiling from our side then tallies with the asset register that they submit to us. And then also the new implementing agents taking over the sites from 1 October, they obviously also have an incentive to make sure that they receive an asset register per site that is accurate, because they will in future then be held accountable for the asset register if it's not accurate. So I think I addressed the issue of payment without supporting documents. There are detailed checklists in place now, which is why we had the issue with the training, is because we checked and we found that all the supporting documents were not there, which meant we didn't count the training as valid training, and we also didn't count the invoices as valid invoices. And we therefore did not recognize what the IA claimed to have trained, since it was not all supported by valid POE. And I think we have spoken to the consequences for irregular expenditure related to the CWP, maybe just to the extent that the entire contract that was irregular, there was a separate forensic investigation into that process. That forensic investigation also identified quite a significant number of employees that had to be further investigated. All but one of those employees that left the department, most of them before the previous financial year even started. So there was only one employee left in the department. An investigation was conducted, and the investigation concluded that this employee was not involved in the procurement process, and therefore no charges will be laid. So there was definitely an attempt, at least in terms of the fact that the entire CWP contract for 3.5 years was irregular, to take action. Unfortunately, as I said, most of those employees had left the department, some of them 2-3 years ago already. So it was not possible for us. We cannot take disciplinary action when a person has left the department. However, if there was any fraudulent activity, that obviously does not expire. And where, in the case of the report that we handed over to the Hawks, if they identify any fraudulent activity, so regardless of whether the person is still in the department, they will definitely take further action. Thank you, Chair. I think from my side, those were all the questions related to CWP.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Chair, if you'll allow, I will then call upon Temba to respond on all the DDM related questions. Thank you.
Thanks, DG, and good afternoon to the Minister and the Deputy Ministers, and to all the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. I will start with the question from Honorable Groenewald on the project on urgent repairs and maintenance of water and sanitation infrastructure. I think I can confirm that we will provide the list as the honorable member has requested of this project. These are projects that are implemented by municipalities directly and funded through the municipal infrastructure grant. And these are projects that they were started mid-year to accommodate municipalities to give them ability to also respond to the challenges of COVID-19. These are projects that were also adopted by approved by councils, and they are registered in the MIG MIS. So we will provide the list as requested, and we note the time of 7 days that honorable member has requested. Is information that is available, which we can avail. Then the next questions, it's question that comes from Honorable Gaza on the IDP, the relationship of the IDP and the one plan, and the Honorable Groenewald also on the consultation, and the Honorable Brink. Just to say firstly that the one plan, it's not a municipal. The one plan is not a municipal plan. It's a plan of all of government. So the one plan is not subsumed. The IDPs are not subsumed into or replaced by the one plan. In the context of the constitutional sort of architecture and how the different spheres perform their function, powers and function, within that distinctiveness, they will continue to perform their roles and responsibilities. So municipalities, as it relates to IDPs, they will still be expected to undertake those processes of planning at a municipal level in terms of how they prepare IDPs. And then the other spheres will also do the same. But because of IGR, we all have a responsibility then to provide a coherent government for the Republic. And that coherent government through the DDM is then expressed in this one plan. So the one plan, what it does, it actually enhances the IDP. It doesn't replace the IDP, it enhances the IDP because now it brings resources that are specially targeted to that particular district from national, from the province, but it also mobilizes resources from stakeholders outside of government to ensure that we have one sort of integrated plan for that district that responds to the challenges, but also takes advantage of the opportunities that are provided and the endowment that is available in that particular district. So those two processes will continue, Honorable Gaza, as it relates to the IDPs, the priorities. And ordinarily, the timelines or priorities that are set or identified during the IDP consultations, those priorities are processed through councils, and based on available budgets, they will then do a reprioritization in terms of which are the immediate projects or priorities that are going to be implemented. And in this context now of the one plan, those priorities, it means the municipality will have also be supported by resources, as I was saying, from national and also from the provincial government. So there is that consultation also in the development of the one plans in terms of ensuring that all the spheres are part of the planning process and the development of the one plans. And that consultation on the one plan, it would be different from the consultations, that extensive consultations that would have been done in the development of the IDP, which is a process that legally it's actually done by municipalities. Those are so I've tried to cover all three questions from Honorable Gaza, Groenewald, and Honorable Brink. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. If I will then allow
Unzima, we can hear you, Honorable Gigi.
Sorry, we can't hear Honorable.
You are breaking.
Yes, Honorable Acting Chair, I'm done.
So Chairperson, if you will allow, I would then ask our CFO to come in just to respond to all the financial related. Thank you, Chair.
CFO come in.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Chairperson. Thank you, Chairperson. Good afternoon, Minister, Deputy Ministers, and honorable members and colleagues. I will be touching on the areas that have not been touched. I think it's indicated that to a large extent, the audit outcome is linked to the CWP program. But if I can just maybe zoom into the question by Honorable Cesar, where he asked about the mechanism, what mechanism has the department put in place to minimize the invasion period. I must indicate that yes, at some stage we had some challenges with capacity in regard to the following up and investigating cases of irregular expenditure. We have since put together a loss control and asset disposal committee, which was not in place, but that was done towards the tail end of the year. It is in place now. We're actually reviewing all the cases and then making the recommendations appropriately. Furthermore, we have sourced the services, a panel of service providers that can also do some forensic investigation so that as and when the need arise, given the limited capacity internally, we're able to tap into them without having to go through a long period. This panel was sourced through a proper supply chain management process. So that's one way of trying to make sure that at least we're able to get a service provider when we need them, such that we can fast track them. But a big chunk of these cases are legacy cases, and they relate to the CWP as indicated. And as such, if I can now touch to the unauthorized, irregular expenditure in particular, irregular expenditure is actually in the main linked to the CWP, NPOs that were procured irregular as declared by the Circuit Court judgment last year, which resulted in us having to restate the irregular expenditure even for the prior year. And it ended up going up. And on the same note, I need to also indicate that the irregular expenditure as such, members must expect that it will also be reported in the current year, that means 2022, on account that the entire contract was declared irregular, which means any expenditure incurred in the contract at the time of, once we incurred, it will have to be declared as such. And some of the expenditure was only incurred in the current year, and there was no room for the contract to be stopped as such, because I think the court did grant permission to can continue. This is just to make sure that you don't actually adversely affect those that are benefiting from the program. So once we have really managed to actually clean up the processes, which we have started working as Mr. Precharas indicated, and most of this work started towards the end of the financial year, unfortunately. So a lot of what we are doing may not necessarily be evident on the outcome itself. However, I think in due time it will be seen. It's just that we need to understand that unfortunately certain things cannot be undone within a short space of time. Then if I can move, I won't report to what has been shared by Peter, because I think a lot of issues he touched on. Then there's Member Brink made mention of the lack of sense of urgency to attain at least an unqualified audit opinion. As I indicated, there's quite a few of us who joined the organization towards the end of the financial year, myself being one of them. Obviously, we were all concerned about the outcome of the department. We are working towards getting a better one. However, the legacy issues that cannot be undone, unfortunately, within a short space of time, they will actually impact us until now. But in the current year, there's quite a lot, actually started from late last year, and that we are doing, which with a view of trying to get a better audit outcome. However, you realize, I know that I heard in the morning that there was a concept, is the same report coming again every year. Irregular expenditure is being reported. But like I said, it's related to the same contract that has been running for all these years. So for as long as it's running, that irregular expenditure will be there. Hence, until it's closed off accordingly, and then we recover and so on. But then there was a question about this qualified audit opinion in achievement. I need to indicate, Member Brigade, definitely not. All what you're saying is that we sustained the quality, qualified audit opinion, same as last year. That's what I think this was meant to indicate that in the main, not that we regard that as an achievement. It's not something that can be celebrated. I agree with you 100% on that one. So like I said, most of the actions, I'm feeling some of them get tail end, but then a lot of work is only happening and will be seen as we go forward. So I think we just need a chance. If you get given the chance, I think a lot of things can be fixed based on what you've done so far. That's my view. Then there was a comment from Member Mpumza about account officer and senior management not in a position to submit a quality financial statements. We are very well competent to compile and submit quality financial statements. Unfortunately, some of the issues as indicated again, they could not be fixed because they were linked to the issues of CWP. Example of them, the asset which were upfront, with AGSA, that unfortunately we could not do that because there was no asset verification done and so on, which is something that we are working on as Peter reported earlier on. And obviously there was other issues of accruals which are also linked to CWP participants. And again, those things, some of them, they could not be, unfortunately, be fixed. But however, I'm not saying all is well. There are also issues of capabilities which we have identified, which we are on in terms of trying to capacitate. People who staff need to capacitate in some areas in terms of making sure they do things right, like performing the necessary regular reconciliations, such that by the end of the financial year, these things of we have like financial system that can be supported by like a complete and accurate schedules. Then there was a question around why did you spend 96.6% of the budget, yet the achievement on the APP targets is 68%. I need to indicate that the 96.6% include transfer payments that are actually transferred to the municipalities and some grants in the main. So if we were to discount that fact, actually the spending that is linked to it would be around 80%. I thought I need to qualify the step because yes, at face value, it looks like yes, we spend the entire amount needed to achieve so little. But the issue in the main is that there's a lot of transfer. The biggest chunk of the department's budget is for transfer payments, which is spent at a different level, like at municipalities and so on. Okay, I think on the lack of record keeping, Mr. President spoke to that one on the issues raised by Member Hadebe. On those ones, yes, there are issues of timesheets, obviously for the MPOs. And I think Mr. President has explained exactly what we are putting in place to make sure that our MPOs that we have contracted actually playing their part. And they also understand that there's also consequences for them for not playing along with us. Because I think in the main, the management of the MPOs has not been as firm as what we are trying to do lately. And then obviously there has been also some few batches from like normal operations that could not be picked up. But unfortunately, they were asking for batches were dating back to 2018-19 because of the same contract, because they kept on going back all the time that we could not find. So some of the batches, what we are doing is some of the improvements. We are now trying to digitize like all the batches. Once they are done, we are trying to scan them such that there's always a backup when they are required in case they go missing. Because there is also a space issue within the building that we occupy. I think, Chairperson, I've kind of touched the gaps. I think after Mr. President touched a lot of things, I don't have to talk to most of these issues because in the main, they are linked to the CWP program, and which is currently acting on. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, DJ.
Well, thank you so much, Chairperson, and I want to thank the team for all the responses. Just on my side, some additional points. So on the qualified audit opinion, yes, we agree that it's not an opinion to be celebrated. However, I think that the honourable member needs to note that within our strategic plan, the target for this financial year under review was actually obtaining a qualified audit. We anticipate to that. So in the outer years, from this year onwards, we will be looking at attaining an unqualified audit chair. Perhaps then just one more question that was also raised around recruitment, and that was to also then look at recruitment of staff members additional to the establishment. Honourable Chair and honourable members, I would like to confirm that the approach that we are following in terms of bringing staff in additional to the establishment is in line with the prescripts of the public service regulations. And we believe that the members that we are bringing on board will indeed be adding value to the institution, especially in the areas where we have found that we have qualified audit results. IT for us was also very important, and we have struggled with the systems that have been provided to us by the CETA. We are paying CWP participants, and we know that there's over 250,000 of these participants. We have to make sure that we reconcile, but not only that, we have to also ensure that the records are accurate so that we don't find ourselves in a situation where we receive the qualification outcomes that we are receiving. I also then thought, Honorable Chairperson, that we will conclude by saying that the department remains committed. We are resolute in terms of what it is that we believe needs to be achieved. Clearly for us, it's really been a timing issue in that, you know, the year not only went quickly, we were also without necessarily having all the resources that we needed. But nonetheless, I believe that we are on the right track. And I'd just like to thank the audit committee. Sorry, the portfolio committee. I beg your pardon, Chair, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, DG. There were questions raised on MISA. CEO MISA.
Chair, thank you very much. Yes, there were a few questions raised, Chair. I will start with the question raised by Honorable Zam with regard to the issue of reliable basic services, which is really our core focus, more especially accelerating of water and sanitation services. Why many municipalities seems not to improve. If I may respond, there are a number of factors that Honorable Fraser will appreciate contribute to the challenge around the provision of reliable basic services, more especially water and sanitation, and of course the issue of roads as well. One such challenge is lack of funding for repairs and maintenance in many small municipalities in our country, resulting in a situation where infrastructure decays and is not being upgraded or maintained as it should. And what we have done to respond to that as part of our mandate, as you know, our mandate is to provide support. What we have done, one of the key achievements that we managed to do was one, to influence the reforms on what MIG fund. Previously, MIG could only fund new infrastructure and also refurbishment, but only if it was not because of lack of maintenance, then you could allow for refurbishment. Now, what we have done was to influence that be looked at, and currently MIG now makes provision of 10% towards the repairs and maintenance of municipal infrastructure, targeting water and sanitation infrastructure. And there is also, over and above the 10%, 5% that is now allowed for asset management planning. This was not there before, and through our support to municipalities, now we do have. Now, what is now key, which we are doing, is to now support municipalities to prioritize asset management, which is really key if we want this. But over and above that, in our report, you will see that we have supported already 10 districts with the development and implementation of water conservation and water demand management strategies, with the development of those plans, and now we're assisting them to implement some of those plans. A case in point, if you go to Makanda, for instance, we will see a huge improvement in terms of reliable water and sanitation infrastructure. We've been there assisting them. And a number of other municipalities, of course, in the country. But there are 10 districts in, that we have, we can boldly say we have managed to support 80 district municipalities with the implementation of operations and maintenance plans, which again would allow was supporting them to make sure the number of other standard operating to ensure that at least municipalities and water services and authorities, they've got basic tools to operate and maintain and even manage the water function. So that work we've done, and we can demonstrate with evidence where we've implemented those. And of course, the challenge around and then the reliability and the support that we provide, it will take, of course, more than support from MISA, but also the fixing of municipalities themselves in terms of governance, the issue of financial management, and the issue of addressing the human resource issues within municipalities to be able to implement some of the support programs that are provided by MISA, Treasury, and other agencies that are supporting municipalities. But I can indicate that there's a lot that we've done. And even in terms of roads, if you go to Makanda today, maybe as part of the portfolio committee oversight, you will see a huge difference in terms of the fixing of roads infrastructure, and that is done by MISA. So there are a number of other areas in the country that we can pinpoint the improvements. And by Honorable Groenewald around the long-term infrastructure investment plans for municipalities, why we could not do and make sure that they are there, why it's taking too long. Chair, yes, of course, the plan in our current APP was not to develop those plans for municipalities. They are there. They were supported through the Cooperative program and the city support program. Now, what we were doing, which was our plan, was to then support municipalities with the implementation of those long-term infrastructure investment plans. And we did indeed assist them in identifying priority projects from those long-term infrastructure plans. But of course, we've had challenges, in terms of municipalities submitting some of the plans, and also in terms of ensuring that some of those projects, and also in terms of ensuring that those funding agreements are concluded with some of the funders that we had introduced to municipalities. So there were those delays, which unfortunately were really beyond our control as well. But in terms of really supporting, we did provide the support that we had planned to provide. Then there was the issue around the boreholes. I think Mr. Fossey has responded in as far as MIG program is concerned. But over and above the boreholes that were done through MIG, there are a number of boreholes that MISA, TPSA, and I think COGTA in KZN and other provinces were done. And from the MISA point of view, and we will provide the committee with all the boreholes that we did, there are a number of them, and the locations as requested, including the water infrastructure retitulation project that we did in Bakulusi, as well as the wastewater upgrading of the wastewater treatment plants, as well as the costs involved for each of these projects. We'll provide a committee with that, and also we're available to take committees to some of these projects to see the impact that we think through these projects we have made in improving the lives of our people who previously did not have access to water at all. But there is, of course, a lot that we're doing, Chairperson, together with some of the agencies of government and departments. I'm not sure if I've missed any question, Chair, but I think I've answered all of them. But my colleagues are also here to add if I've missed any. My colleagues also Amlang I have Mr. Machada, I have other colleagues. If there are questions that I did not respond to, they may also come in. Thanks, Chairperson. I'm not of connectivity this side. I got my responses.
You are audible. You are audible.
Can I come in, Chair? Is it possible?
Yes, to come in.
No, Chair. I appreciate the response of the COO. I really do. Mine was not just to say they do not have anything that they are doing. Obviously, they wake up every morning going to work just like all of us. But I was just interested, Chair, whether, because we can say that in Makhanda there is a road infrastructure, which is correct. And we can go on to the 10 districts that they have supported. But I just wanted a holistic approach in terms of their targets as the entity, because they are a national entity such that you can't speak for the other and not speak for the whole. I don't know if I'm clear there. That they would perhaps have some time frames in terms of how much of what we're doing will ultimately result in having covered water-stricken areas across the country. How much of it will need assistance in terms of the National Treasury having to put resources so that our people on the ground really get potable water, because it's really embarrassing. It's really embarrassing to go to the Eastern Cape or to get to Mpumalanga or to get to Northwest and you find people with ablution facilities that are not flushable. You find either roads are in a bad state in Emakazeni. You find roads in a bad state in your Mamusa and so forth. And we are dealing with a clear mandate of MISA that says that it should enhance local government to enable delivery of reliable infrastructure for sustainable provision of basic service. So I just wanted them to get to a point where they wouldn't say we are a national entity and then we'll pinpoint where we are doing. It's not as if we're saying there's nothing that is done. We're saying that is there a holistic approach to say this particular work that we're doing in supporting municipalities to deliver on reliable infrastructure, when will it find traction? When will our people get to a point of saying now we have potable water, even not even in rural areas and in some urban areas, our people are not finding that comfort. So that's my question, the essence of my question, the targets that they want to then that they are envisaging, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
I think they have captured now the essence of your question. CEO of MISA.
No, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. And let me appreciate again, I think the input by Honorable Fleischer. And I think it's a valid point, Chair. And if we look into our APP, for instance, Chair, the current APP, you will see that we are targeting all 44 districts with the improvement on the performance of MIG. But our focus on MIG is not just expenditure. We will see the expenditure component is not our thing on that in terms of expenditure, but is on the reliability and the quality of the infrastructure that is developed through, of course, support measures that MISA is in working with DPSA targeting to support. One important issue that we managed to do, Chairperson, as I've indicated earlier, was to reform MIG so that all MIG receiving municipalities, I think it's 213 if I'm not mistaken, now have got access to at least 10% of the funding to address their challenges around repairs and maintenance. And we're hoping that will go a long way, Chair, if municipalities could really prioritize the issue of asset management, which is an area that is a big challenge. And currently in the budget forum that we're dealing with, there's a work stream that deals specifically with the issue of asset management and the discipline around it. And MISA is playing a key role influencing government on how asset management should now be prioritized, the incentives that we must now put in place, as well as the disincentives that we must put in place to ensure that the issue of reliability of water supply, as well as other services, is taken care of. So we're hoping that through these interventions, and also the role of MISA in the MIG program, for instance, MISA is expected now to approve all municipal plans that will be funded through MIG. In other words, through our engineers who are able to say, no, but what you are prioritizing is not going to respond to the challenge that you are facing. Therefore, through our assessment that we've done, this is the challenge that we think we are facing, and we think we must fund as MIG, so that MIG is not used to just fund a new project for the purpose of just spending MIG. So those reforms are there aimed at improving the quality of spend of the municipal infrastructure grant. But beyond that, Chair, you will see that there are a number of programs that we have, together with DPSA and National Treasury, worked on. One such program is called Private Sector Participation Model, where we're saying, look, the reality is that the fiscus will never be sufficient to respond to the kind of challenge that we're facing as a country around infrastructure development and in the country. And then we're saying, can we come up with programs that will attract more private sector involvement in the funding of municipal infrastructure? Even for those municipalities that are grant reliant, can we say we come up with a program where the grants themselves can be used to leverage more funding towards municipal infrastructure? That program has since been endorsed by government. It's called Private Sector Participation, and we are implementing it together with National Treasury, DPSA, and other agencies. And over and above that, there's a lot of programs like there's now a budget facility for infrastructure that is now with Treasury, where we've made a submission together with DPSA for funding of a water and sanitation program. So we're persuading Treasury to say we need to come up with a program where we will really deal with the issue of non-revenue water and non-revenue electricity in the country. So all these are aimed at addressing the challenges around reliability. Because if you don't deal with the losses that are the technical losses and so forth, then you will continue having the challenge around reliability, the challenge around the rising non-revenue water and so forth. So I'm not sure if I've been able to respond, Chair, but it's, there's a lot of interventions just beyond MISA that we are putting in place to address some of these challenges. But beyond that, there is also work that from MISA, we use our own funding to respond to many of these challenges around ensuring that more especially the rural areas, they do have access to basic water through boreholes, Honorable Chair, as well as through a spring protection program that we are running, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vimba, the CEO of MISA. You know, CEO, the persistent challenge and is not a political or a governance matter. It is a technical issue that city is over 200 years old, and then the whole of your water infrastructure is over aged. Then it needs the complete refurbishment. Perhaps your support in that area. I heard that you are saying that you have constructed a road around that area. So perhaps your intervention would assist that municipality. We are through with you now, MISA. I think that the next to respond is the DG for Traditional Affairs. Questions raised around initiation, a number of issues. And DG, in your presentation and in your programs, I don't know where this particular one is falling under which program, on your 3 programs, major programs. That you have this program of Green Revolution being managed by your department. I have not seen targets that you have achieved around that. Where exactly are you implementing this Green Revolution and the pilots? And how far have you moved around that? DG, Traditional Affairs.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, honorable members, once again. Yes, there are a number of questions raised by Honorable Cesar, and then of course the additional one coming from you, Chair. Yes, I'm also accompanied by other colleagues of those that are with me. The one that indicated that there's a question that she will speak to is our DDG for Institutional Support and Coordination, Mashandu. So through your permission, Chairperson, if I could ask DDG Shandu to speak to the question that the Honorable Cesar spoke about around the farming vouchers. DDG?
You are allowed, you are permitted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson, and good afternoon, honorable members. Yes, indeed, there was partnership with the Solidarity Fund in relation to the farming vouchers. I would like to bring to the attention of the members that those farming vouchers, each recipient received 2,000 Rand worth of the voucher, and they were redeemed from the identified suppliers based on their needs. And I must indicate that the target was in the main those that are already doing subsistence farming in their respective areas. And as and when they were redeeming those vouchers, there were records to that effect, and the information was also relayed to the to Solidarity Fund for consolidation. The Department of Traditional Affairs worked very closely with the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development to make sure that those people that are receiving vouchers are also going to be considered for a PESI2 program, which is going to be implemented this financial year. Chair, I must indicate that it may not have been enough for subsistence farmers, but it was something that they would that they appreciated. This we picked up when there were some visits undertaken in Northwest by members of the National House, whereby some of the communities and farmers that benefited from the program appreciated the intervention. And also I would like to bring to the attention of members that traditional leaders, as we were engaged in this process, traditional leaders were very much involved in identifying beneficiaries from their respective communities. The one that that has been asked, the question that's been asked by Honorable Member Pumza, on agrarian revolution, yes, there were pilot projects that were at which this was initiated. And I must indicate that because we did not have a budget, this was done through the WP program, and it's part of the 34 sites that they had that they were working on. So we do have a list of those sites we can share with the members at which these pilots were done. I thank you, Chairperson and members.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, DDG. If I may then just proceed, just to indicate that PESI2 that the DDG is talking about is the Presidential Economic Stimulus Initiative. And because even with this one, the 2,000 rand voucher, this was really identifying those small-scale farmers where work was already in progress, but they were inconvenienced by COVID-19. And the voucher was really to help them get fertilizers, seedlings, seeds, and so on and so on for productive use. Indeed, as the DDG says, it would not necessarily be enough to lead to any large-scale production, but it was really appreciated in helping the recipients to at least get some farming inputs that they can use for food security. Just perhaps to then go back to the issue of the 13 initiates who lost their lives in the Eastern Cape. I think here the committee would recall that there were measures specifically on the side of the committee to ensure that the leadership of the province through the MEC, the head of department, as well as the acting chairperson of the provincial house are held accountable. And through the engagements and the reports that they have provided, they have been able to indicate on each specific case what is it that happened, if there was a death, what was the cause of death, and they have been able to indicate in their reports to this committee where arrests have been effected. They have been able to indicate even the case numbers where cases have been open. So I think the work now with the Customary Initiation Act having come into effect on the 1st of September, I think it now provides even more leverage. I know that the National Initiation Task Team has its closing meeting in September as part of handing over to the structures provided for in the Act. At the national level is the National Initiation Oversight Committee, which the Minister has already established. He has already gazetted the names of the members, and provinces are in the process of creating the provincial equivalent structures for that. So they will then carry that baton to make sure that particularly with the enabling measures that are now provided for in the Customary Initiation Act. We begin to deal with this challenge that we have faced for a very long time. But yes, I mean, that's the reporting that has been happening through the both the preparatory meetings that took place in government when the province was preparing to come and account to the committee, but also through the engagements that took place in the committee itself. The difficult one is this issue of land, landless traditional leaders, because it takes time to address. Indeed, there is a process that we are encouraging taking place between some of the provinces with the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, where the department is assisting them to identify parcels of land that could be made available. So for example, we know in the Free State, through discussions between the Premier's office and the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, that through that process, they have been able to identify land for one of the communities. I think it was Batlokoba Mahalo. So it's a slow process, but it is receiving attention because then there are resources that get involved in this process. One of the useful developments that we think may assist going forward is the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development has also been working on a land donations policy. And alongside that, they've been identifying land donation offers, because they say there are those who are prepared to donate land, but there must be an enabling policy that facilitate that process of land donation. So as these engagements continue to take place with affected provinces, we can expect that we will see some of the communities benefiting. Of course, others, this is being addressed through the other process of land claims, which also the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development is responsible for. Admittedly, a little bit slow. It's a complex process, but we've been encouraged by what we see in some of the process, in some of the provinces. The other difficult issue, Honorable Geza, of course, is this one on financial and human resource capacity. I mean, we're coming out of a very difficult period now, and a number of departments have been facing cuts as opposed to increases. From our side, the way we are approaching this is we are having ongoing discussions with National Treasury. In fact, in the last meeting that we had, where we were illustrating the plight we face, that there are certain areas where there are even compliance matters. So, for example, capacity for risk management, we use contract appointments. Capacity for internal audit, we use contract appointments. And I know that my colleagues in finance as well have certain areas where, I mean, for stronger compliance, you need to make sure that there's a segregation of duties. So we discussed it with them, and they said, continue working on your plans in that area. We will also continue to see how we can meet you halfway. So that's the one aspect that we are pursuing with National Treasury. Otherwise, we're then using contract appointments. We're using contract appointments, using where, you know, if a post is vacant and it takes us 3 months or 4 months to fill it, the little bit of money that was saved during the 4 months, we then use that to assist with the appointment of a contract capacity so that work can happen in the meantime. We also leverage partnerships, Honorable Chairperson, where necessary and possible. So, for example, the capacity building program that we have is a partnership between ourselves and LG CETA. So we have been able to get assistance to have a program of induction on the new legislation, the Traditional and Question Leadership Act, developed through that partnership. We didn't have to spend money on it. And there is a program of training as well. It's just that it's not reportable for the year under a review, but it will be reported as part of this new financial year. because we've been going around as part of that partnership with LG SETA to make sure that training takes place. And that really assists, it augments our capacity, because on our own, we were indeed not going to be able to do that. But obviously in the long run, it is this engagement that that will continue to pursue. And the gestures that we had from National Treasury was that let's not lose hope. Let's keep exchanging ideas. We'll keep also looking at where avenues are available to assist you gradually build up your capacity. I think those were the issues that were raised about the Department of Traditional Affairs, Honorable Chair. Thanks.
Thanks, DG. Honorable members, any follow-up questions? Honorable members, members of the Portfolio Committee, are you there?
We are here, Chair. It appears as if members are covered.
Yeah, you are all covered. Thank you very much.
I'm not covered. I'm not covered.
Oh, the chair is back.
I'm unable to raise my hand. I've been trying, but I'm not covered. It's just a general point, Chairperson.
Yes, sir.
That one would wish that whether we're talking plans, whether we're talking about what we call legacy issues, I think generally the Portfolio Committee should always want to ask for plans with time frames as to when do we anticipate that we would be able to deal with what we call legacy issues. Because what happened, whatever year, it was still the same government. And when we want to deal with such, there should be very clear plans with time frames so that we don't talk in general terms. So that would be the first general statement. Now, on the issue of water and sanitation and reliability, I think it's a big issue across the country. So maybe we need big plans guided by DDM to say, how do we respond? I think the president has been going around the country apologizing. So beyond what we have planned, there are developments from the experience of the campaign. So one would actually say MISA and whatever other agencies of government, there needs to be a very clear plan as to how do we respond to the issue of unreliability of water. If we were to share experiences from where we come from, I don't think they would want to listen to what we are talking about here. So one would suggest that we'll still have to engage on this issue of water and sanitation. And the department must actually lead that process, especially working with districts. It's a big issue. So I don't want to get into this small bits and pieces about it. Makana, that was mentioned. Well, I'm new to the Portfolio Committee, but I know that in Makana, you'll always hear problems about water and sanitation. Every time we are approaching that festival in Makana around June, you'd always have problems. And that is one area which was a very highly contested area around local government. But I'm saying let's just have a broad plan that respond to the issues that have been raised across. That also talks to roads, as was mentioned, but water and sanitation. I think what we are discussing is something that we need to follow up on generally across the country. It's not question, it's just a comment. I'm sorry that I came in late and you might have responded to what I'm raising, but it was difficult for me to keep quiet, especially when you talk about water and sanitation, because I know it's an area that we need. There's some cry across the country about incomplete projects that do not give us water, but they are taps, all sorts of difficulties around water. I just thought, Chair, I must introduce myself by raising those two issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think you arrive at a correct time when we are proceeding towards the end. Because honorable members, I think they are done with their follow-up questions. May I now, Chair, allow you to conclude this particular meeting that we have arrived now? The two issues critical that we have raised that we need to follow up in a time frame. I think the department is listening very carefully for what we're raising. Can I now allow you to conclude this meeting?
Thank you very much, Acting Chairperson. I'm sorry that I had to mix this important meeting with another task assigned to me by the Speaker of Parliament. I did indicate to the Minister, I'm informed there's Deputy Minister as well, the two HODs. We appreciate sessions of this nature because it helps us to get to understand what is being done. One executive authority in the past used to say members of parliament are wasting our time. They keep on asking questions when we are actually doing the work. I'm sure you are not like that member of the executive. You appreciate some of the questions that come from members because the intention is to help us to get focused. They also have got this responsibility to do oversight. All those who might be irritated by the questions, I plead with them to say, let's allow that space, especially in the context that we are beginning to get questioned as Parliament as to whether the oversight we are doing is effective or not. So somehow we will have to sharpen those questions and would expect responses that are positive. But as I was listening, copiously writing notes, I think we are different as members of the committee from when we started in terms of your responses. And I'm sure at a particular stage would be at the same level in terms of understanding what we are about in terms of responding to the challenges communities are raising. So in other words, I appreciate using this little time that I had, the responses that I noted, and I'm sure you are adding numbers in terms of support in the programs that you are doing. in terms of responding to questions as they get raised now by communities, not by us with you. With those few words, actually those two questions I was raising, they were almost like closing remarks to say, let's have plans to respond to some of the issues with time frames, especially when we talk about legacy challenges. This CWP program, must find somehow a way to close that. Because if we don't, we'll keep on asking these questions. And if there were mistakes, let's learn from them. But all the time, there must be time frames to deal with this. In other words, when you say to us legacy issues, and one would say, I was not there, it doesn't take away the fact that it was the same government, same officials. And the last point is where there is wrongdoing. I know it is not easy when we say there must be consequences. I know it is not easy as well when we say, people usually jump out of the ship when there are challenges. And there might not be an easy answer to say, what do you do when people are jumping out, when some challenges have been committed? I heard about the Hawks and whoever. But I think as well, we must find a way as the department to say, this is how we deal with some of these tendencies. People commit mistakes, and when we want them to answer, they jump. And so there must be a way. I don't know. I am just saying, as people who are involved in it, let's find a way so that people are beginning to be accountable. For some of us who are in politics, we get punished by communities for not doing what they believe is right. So it is a time now that all of us must hold everybody accountable. I just thought I should raise those issues. They are general because I came at the end, and I hope all of us, we are better than when we started. Can I close the meeting? Can I close the meeting?
As the chair, you just say the meeting.
Yes, okay. Okay. No, I just wanted to hear some voices. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very good, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.